Both adequate and electronic notice of this meeting were provided according to law by written notice to the Morristown Daily Record, the official newspaper of the town of Morristown, and to the Newark Star Ledger, both more than 48 hours ago. Notice was also posted in Town Hall and on the town website and filed in the office of the town clerk of the town of Morristown. I do further state that I shall enter into the minutes of this special meeting a statement that such notice was furnished as particularly described by me in this public announcement. I will take a roll call. Councilman Armington.
Here.
Councilwoman Cotton and Councilwoman Foster are both excused this evening. Councilman Iannicone.
Here.
Councilman Silva.
Present.
Councilman Umbriac.
Here.
Council President Mayer.
Here.
Ms. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I'm going to make a brief statement before we start. We are here tonight to discuss and determine the status of Enslin's taxi license. We are here to discuss Mr. Enslin hiring and employing unpermitted drivers and his failure to register and obtain a license with the town in the allotted time frame. Mr. Enslin is still operating his taxi business without a current valid permit. We are not here to discuss the specifics of any violation. Some are still in the court system, but we can discuss the fact that Enslin has many unpermitted drivers that have received violations. We can discuss that one unpermitted driver employed by Enslin's would most likely not have qualified for a permit. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Enslin and his rep to come forward and present their side of this. I don't see anybody from Mr. Enslin's here. Mr. Michello, do you have something you could add to this?
No, I would just like, if we could just, for the purposes of having a record, Madam Clerk, can you just talk about any attempts to notice Mr. Enslin to be here this evening?
Yes, notice was provided directly to Mr. Enslin's residence via certified mail, which we were able to confirm receipt. It was also published in the Daily Record.
Okay. Council President, as your counsel, I advise that the service here was proper, the notice was proper, and that you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. So we don't have Mr. Enslin's side, so I will ask my fellow council members to proceed with a discussion of how we would like to handle Mr. Enslin's taxi license. As we know, he has an extensive list of unpermitted drivers that have received summonses for different violations, and he has not registered in the allotted time frame. We know the clerk had given him a grace period of 1 month. That has come and gone. So I'd like to open it up to the council members.
Sure, I'll start. So thank you for putting together the packet. I know it was probably a lot of work to pull together all of this information, but I did read it all, and certainly from reading it, there's certainly a track record here that it appears that Mr. Enslin, shows up late when he's supposed to show up on time for certain things, supposed to file accordingly by certain dates, and he misses that, and then he shows up and there's issues. I guess I could say there were 26 violations that I counted in the past 6 years, despite what Mr. Enslin said. He had a perfect record. So everything is well documented, and I would see no reason to renew this. There's issues, there's public safety issues that are at stake, and I guess I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Margo, when we spoke a couple weeks ago, I wanted to get a sense about, I think the record is clear as Nathan has expressed. Wanted to get a sense of the other licenses, that are valid. Do they have this number of violations? What's the standard that we're running with? Clearly no one has a clean slate, but we want to see if is this applicant essentially egregiously over, not performing per the code and per the expectation, and that's my question.
Well, in terms of violations, yes, many of the drivers have basic traffic violations issued to them. The two more egregious ones that came to our attention recently, I did not see that in any other instance. In terms of renewals of the other licensees, there has sort of taken on a laissez-faire attitude when it comes to renewal. it's my understanding that it started in 2016 when the fees were waived. Then there became no sense of urgency. There was no real competition. People were just getting their same licenses issued over and over again. And through my predecessor and even his predecessor, it appears to me when looking at the records that the whole process just has fallen apart over the years. So I take responsibility and have now begun to develop process improvements, which I put on paper in case anybody asked about it. But we are fully engaged to get this turned around 180% for renewals next year.
So we got two issues and just to build on what Stefan was asking. Whatever we decide to do here, I think we have to make sure we act consistently and that we're not being arbitrary between the various license holders. And to clarify the question, Island is one owner, so he has one license to operate a taxi cab company in town.
He has an owner license.
And then how many vehicles and how many drivers does he currently have?
6 drivers, 6 taxis, and 1 limo.
6 taxis and 1 limo, and then he registers and how many of those does he have on the road? How many are actually being used?
No idea.
Okay, because the reason why I ask these questions
many permitted drivers also?
the reason why I ask these questions is primarily because our job is twofold. One, the safety of the taxis, and secondly, to make sure that this service is maintained in a good, safe manner for the citizens of our town. A lot of people, particularly people without means, rely on these taxis. And I think the town was very wise. The reason why we have taxis is that we can regulate the rate. We can keep a reasonable rate so that people can go to the grocery, go to the bank, and easily get around town at a reasonable fee within town. That's why we basically have a taxi cab company. Otherwise, if we didn't want to regulate rates, there's really no reason to have any of this in place. That being said, to build on Stefan's question, twofold. One, does anybody else have as egregious of a record as this owner? Is there a big difference, little difference? Can you somehow put it in scale for us?
I could, at another time, get back to you with a detailed report, much like I did. I've done a cursory review of what's called the MVC abstracts for each driver. And again, they're basic traffic violations.
Good.
If I could just add to the standard, the question that you're raising.
Right.
The code, as it's currently constructed, does not place a standard on you in your adjudication role. If you want to impose a standard, that's certainly your right, Councilman. However, if you feel that the conduct in and of itself, aside from anyone else, is egregious enough for revocation, that is your right as a council person tonight.
Right.
But try to put it in context, though, David, if you understand what I mean. Yeah. I want to make sure it's of a degree that's worthy of whatever we decide as our action. And if everybody's just as non-compliant as he is, which I'm hearing they are not, that he's far more non-compliant than any of the other taxi owners, operators, correct?
If I could add, most of the taxi and limo drivers, it is one owner with one vehicle,
Is that what it is?
mostly.
Yeah, it is.
So I just want to clarify something. It's very nice of you to take responsibility for maybe things falling, but every owner of a taxi that wants to operate has the responsibility to come to you before July 31st and get their paperwork in on time. So it's not really your job to chase after them, and it was very gracious of you to give them the grace period, but as business owners, it's their responsibility. So if they're paying a fee or not, they should have more of an onus to come in and pay and register, because we have been waiving it, which will be discussed at the council meeting tonight. But, looking through, Mr. Silva, do you have any comments you want to make before we
Yes.
continue?
Well, they were asking a very important question for context, but my thought is, if all the other companies had the same pattern, then we need to also, act in the same way.
Yes.
Because obviously it's a pattern. And not only is a pattern, it is something that is not going to change. Because for what I read, many opportunities has been given and there is no change. And the contrary is worsened on this pattern, so that's my comment.
The other thing that I find a bit, I don't want to say offensive, but they're supposed to be self-reporting, and that has not happened. And that, to me, is a big violation, not just of each driver getting the violations, the fact that they didn't report them to you as required. This hearing could have been held many years ago, now that we're looking at the list of how many unpermitted drivers he's had through the years. So it's time we cleaned it up, and we're going to discuss if we want to, the options are to suspend his license for a series of time or revoke his license indefinitely, and then I guess he would have to come back and reapply at some point or appeal. So,
Do you want to give
Yeah.
opportunity?
so before we move on, we're going to give public chance to speak. Is there a public hearing of this, or no?
Absolutely, if you're ready.
Is every,
Okay.
I mean-
But we're going to have further discussion, correct?
yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, if anybody from the public would like to come up and speak on behalf of this public hearing, make a statement, or... Excuse me. If you'd like to make a statement, you can
Just-
come up to this.
Just for the public hearing. Just for the public hearing related to Enslin's Taxi.
We're discussing Enslin's taxi license at this hearing.
I'm here for something else.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Does anybody else want to speak on Enslin's taxi license?
Yes, my husband's outside, he'll be in 1 second. He didn't realize you were going to start right at 6:30.
Yes, the meeting was called at 6:30. We start at 6:30.
Okay, so he's right out there, I just told him to come in, he'll be in 1 second.
I do have a hand up online.
Okay, why don't we take the hand up online?
He already started, okay? And you missed it all.
Helen Arnold, can you hear me? Are you there? You may unmute yourself. And please state your name and address for the record.
Helen Arnold, I had my hand up in an accident, sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, nice to speak with you.
Speak with you.
Oops, never mind.
Do we get an address? No? It was an accident.
Accident. So, we see Mr. Enslin's here. He's 15 minutes late. The hearing's already been started.
I would like to hear from them.
Yeah. I just was stating, the hearing's already started. Mr. Enslin, if you'd like to come up and speak on behalf of your taxi service?
I'm George Enslin, the owner of Enslin's Taxi Service and Car Service in Morristown. And I was asked to come here tonight. Does anybody have any questions about anything, or?
Mr. Enslin, this is your opportunity to speak. If you, there's a motion of possible suspension and or revocation of your license. If
Yes.
you'd like the floor to speak to the council, this is your opportunity.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
If you'd like to speak to the council, this is your opportunity to speak.
Okay. I say that we've been in Morristown 25 years. How we got into Morristown is the town clerk. I had a business up in Mine Hill, Dover, and I had a limousine service and a taxi service up there. And he asked me to come down here because we didn't have the service. Most of the guys owned their own car and only went out when they felt like it. So we came into town. He gave me 3 licenses and then eventually up to 7. And we operate 24 hours, 7 days a week for the public. In the beginning, the process for getting a taxi license was just send them over to the town. Then the police would fingerprint them and let us know. Then over the years, it kept getting stricter and stricter, that we had to, now with the process over the last 10 years, which has become pretty difficult, because I put ads in for drivers, and I get drivers call me, and I have to say, you have to go your fingerprinting, you have to go down to make an appointment with, this company does, I forget the name of it, get your fingerprints, takes up to a month to get an appointment, then you submit it to me, I send it to the state, then we have to wait for the state to go through their record, and then they would issue a piece of paper that says that they passed, they have no, had a background check. Then we give it to the town. And with the things that are today, it's almost impossible to get a driver. And the incident happened here with this gentleman who worked for me. He worked for me years ago. He's worked for other people in town. I brought him in for that night. And I feel really bad about the whole thing. But we're here. If you go in the middle of the night, you have a problem, you're stuck somewhere, the police call us. Morristown Hospital calls us. St. Clair's calls us. Parsippany calls us. Madison calls us. Morris Township calls us. We're the only ones who service that. And unfortunately, it's so bad that I don't have anybody who works midnights. And I not only work during the day, but at nighttime, if I get a hospital call or a police call, I get the car myself, and I go pick up people up. I know this wasn't the right thing, but I'm here to serve the community. And the gentleman who I hired, Jermaine, I know his mother, and I know he had some tough times years ago, and I had something on his record. I say with the background checks, people come in, they want to drive, and I send them for a background check, and something they did 30 years ago. They can't get a license. I don't know. I think the requirements, I had a guy one time who worked for the town here, I can mention his name. They made me go through the record with him, and I couldn't hire him, but he worked here for the town. I don't know what the answer is. The strict requirements of being a taxi driver is tougher than Uber drivers, limo drivers, and it puts a pressure on me to make a decision, and I made a poor decision. But it's not going to happen again, because I'm relinquishing a lot of my licenses because I can't find drivers to fill them. So when I end up, I have 7 of them, and I'm probably going to give up 4 right away, and probably more than that. And these people work with me for years. I had people work for me 30 years. He finally got another job, but most of my people have been here 10 years. But it only gives me down to 3 or 4 people. And nights, I have no defense of what I did. It happened. We keep strict control on our drivers. We have GPSs in our car. When the accident did happen, they called me up. We were able to pinpoint them there. That goes with anybody, with any of my cars. We have GPS that tells if they're speeding, hard brakes, where they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. That's all I got to say.
Mr. Island, how feasible is it for you to become compliant with the current regulation in terms of basically the background checks, making sure the drivers that you have are all properly vetted and properly licensed, and catching up with the fees, the vehicle inspections? Do you see any problem in achieving that?
I don't know. With the pressure of everything going on, like we say with Uber, we used to have a really big night business years ago. We had every restaurant and bar in town called us. The owners called us, everything. We'd have run all night long. Now all the kids don't even know what a taxi is. So there's not much there. The whole business is kind of gone.
But aside from the
As far as the town
is concerned,
if we
about
could
compliance.
have, they said he can't get abstracts anymore. If a driver brought an abstract in, I turn it to town and they do it back. it was, I forget what chief it was a couple of years ago, he says, no more, I'm not doing the background checks, you have to go through the state. And that's what started the whole thing. It was kind of tough trying to get everybody on board. I have guys, the ones I have now have been with me probably average 10 years. A new person comes in and goes, what, I got to wait a month to see if I have a job? You know, and I get guys who call down who are experienced drivers from other towns, mainly down closer to this city, which I'd rather have local people, but it's hard to find anybody. It would have to be something directed by the chief. If they could do something to speed up the process, where you could say, hey, you know, and also how strict it is. You know, some guy has a drug bust 30 years ago and lives a good life, you know, and he can't get a taxi license. You know, it's not, I could see if it was a felony or something like that, you know, then you have to think about it too, you know. People change their lives, you know. But I don't have the answers. That's for you guys to decide. But, you know, I had a lot of good people work for me. And some years ago had some bad records. You know, not bad, but, you know, something that couldn't be applied today. And, but we're here for the people of the town. We operate every day through the pandemic. 24 hours we pick up people at the hospital. We take people to the Walmart, the ShopRite. We take employees back and forth to work during the pandemic. The people who worked at the gas stations and convenience stores. You know, the other companies are more one-car companies. They have their regulars. They really don't go out. They might get a call, somebody. And even me, I can't handle anymore. I don't even take out-of-town rides anymore, just to handle Morristown, Morris Township. You know.
You know,
Let me see if you guys don't have more questions.
you can go and then I'll go.
No, go ahead.
Well, you know, before you got here, we were discussing this. This started at 6:30, and there's a series of violations that,
Sure.
from a lot of your drivers not being permitted. And I guess my question to you is, were you aware that you had to report this to the clerk so she'd have a record of it, or?
Well, I say, I did, you know, somebody comes in, they have a good driving record, you know, I hire them, you know, the one last one, because he worked for me before, I didn't get to, but they bring an abstract, they have a good abstract, you know, and they'll get a violation for not having a license, but he'll just walk away and I don't have a driver. And 99.9% of the police know us. They call us, they see the drivers, they know who they are. And yes, if somebody asks them for a license, they don't have one, we'll get a ticket, yeah. And we had one where the guy was almost approved, so I put him in the car, and last year, and I ended up paying the fine, and but he got his license, you know, but he moved on anywhere after all that. You know?
My question was, are you aware that when one of your drivers does get a violation, any violation, you have to report it to the town clerk? Because it goes in a file, so I
don't understand, that means if they get a ticket or something, or?
Yes, every violation that your driver gets has to be reported to the town clerk, not just you, every taxi.
Yeah, well, that's like, how you gonna know about it, you know? We can't do a background check every week, you know?
Answer the question.
Yeah.
Did you know you have to report?
No, I didn't know that we had to do that.
Okay.
No, and I never knew that.
And can we ask why it took you past the cutoff date of July 31st on more than 1 year to register your company with the clerk?
Yeah, well, I had all the paperwork together, and there was some missing. She goes, well, actually, you have 30 more days to apply. And before, when I had 7 guys, and I had a dispatcher, and I had employees, now I do everything myself. So I just got behind on the paperwork. And I went in, and it was some papers were not quite out of date. She goes, don't worry about it. We'll give you an extension 30 days, as long as you have it done before 30 days. I did bring it in. By that point, she said the town council wanted to put it on hold until I came to the meeting.
Right, but last year you were also late by a couple months?
Excuse me?
Last year you were also late by a couple months registering?
Everybody was late.
That
Everybody was late.
Discussing about anybody else, though.
Last year, nobody got the notices, because I know, I was sitting in town with a couple other taxi guys, and they all ran over and got their paperwork. Because I went in, and she was new at the job, so not everybody got it. So that's what happened there.
Okay.
It wasn't,
As a business owner, though, you're responsible for a lot of the things you're denying. You're responsible for knowing that your license has to be renewed by July 31st of each year.
Yeah.
And that you have to know that you're responsible for reporting any violations, any and all violations, to the town clerk's office. It's not really, the onus
Yeah.
isn't on the clerk to do this.
well, they mail out the renewals. And I was talking to Charlie at Peoples, who's been here before me, and Eddie from P&P. They didn't get either, and they were like, what? And so they ran over, got it. I went over, and I said, I got mine, and so we did the paperwork. These are people who have been in town longer than me.
Okay.
In fact, they inherited the licenses from family members. So this year, we all went over beforehand and got the paperwork. Again, mine was late because I didn't have it, it was incomplete. I didn't have all the information, and so then she extended me, she says, I've told her the end of next month, 1 month extension.
Is there any questions?
How important is this business to you?
Excuse me?
How important is this business to you?
How is business?
How important? Yeah, your business, how important?
I've been in business 40 years.
No, but how important? What is the degree of importance that you give to your own business?
To my business is, I feel good about it, when I help people.
But
And
that's not the question. The question is the degree of importance. How important is your own business to yourself?
to myself, okay, I work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The reason of the question is because
That's how important it is.
you are blaming
I'm not blaming anybody.
the clerk's office on
No.
not sending packages,
No,
but
that was last
something-
year.
If something
She was
is
new at,
Excuse me, let the councilman speak.
If
first.
something
Sorry,
is
I
important,
interrupted.
if I own business and that's important to
Yeah.
me, I'm not waiting for some package or some
Yeah.
letter to come.
Yeah.
I'll be on top of it.
Yeah.
So I think my question is directed to, do you acknowledge that you have a pattern of not complying with the regulations or with some of the regulations that have been in place for your business?
That was,
Do you acknowledge that you have a pattern throughout the
Yes.
years?
no, last year, well, okay, I say it was only last year. And last year is because I got to a point where I felt I didn't do it, and I went to two other operators, and they didn't know, they go, geez, I didn't get mine either. So it wasn't a thing of, I went to the town and said, why did I get it? She goes, well, we got a return letter, and they mailed it to the wrong address. And it was like a week or so after the date, or right to the end of the year. I don't know if it was before or after. And then I called these other two gentlemen and their companies, and they didn't, oh yeah, we didn't get ours either. And it was already past the date. It wasn't like, because we were, I guess, just so used to them coming with the paperwork, mailing to us the forms to fill out.
Basically, what Councilman Silva's trying to point out, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is
Yeah.
you have to take responsibility for
Definitely.
your actions, and going to two other operators has no bearing on this decision
No.
amongst us, because you are responsible, and if your company is so important to you for your
Yeah.
income and to the town and helping the town, you should be taking care of business 100%
Yes.
without excuses. You're making excuses for, well, maybe a mail was lost or she gave you time, but if it was my business, I'd be here on July 1st saying I want to renew my license. And just so you know, the reason we have parameters in place for a business of this type is because people's safety.
Yes.
People's lives are in your hand when they're sitting in the back of one of your cars.
Yes.
And when you say, oh, well, he had a drunk driving conviction a number of years ago, that plays into it because people's lives are in your hands. And it can't be a flippant response, well, he wasn't going to pass, so I gave him the keys. We understand you do a service to the town, and we appreciate that. We really do. And I know a lot of people do appreciate it. But there's a line that's been crossed because you have a series of violations of drivers that don't respect your business license that's under your name that you're responsible for. And that's why we're here today.
Definitely.
Because there's a series, not just driving without a permit, but, somebody driving under the influence of drugs, there's different things that have happened that we're just finding out about. And if this had been reported to the clerk, as it has been happening, this hearing probably would have happened a few years ago. Because now it's just accumulated to a point where, on paper, it just doesn't look good.
I know.
That you're trying to justify unpermitted drivers, and some of them might not even be qualified to get a permit, and you're still giving the keys to your car to them. And that's a serious concern for me, and I believe for my fellow council members also. So, is there anything else you'd like to add before we deliberate and just have a discussion?
That's one of the things, the gentleman last year, he worked 40 years in the taxi business. He had a perfect record. I don't know why he took drugs, got in the accident, fired him, and he worked within a week at the prominent limo company in town.
But he was
He drives around
unpermitted.
executives, okay? I'm not going to say the name of the company, because I called him and told him, and I think they let him go, but he was driving over there. I'm not making excuses, but when he worked for me, he had nothing on his record. And I reached out to somebody else, and I called him, and said, you got somebody that's shouldn't be there.
Thank you.
And that's the one where they put in the patch there where he hit the parked cars.
Yes. He was an unpermitted driver, though.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No more
Okay.
questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Margot or David, can you explain the source of the regulations? Is it promulgated by the state, or is it all just within the
It's our
local
town code.
jurisdictions? Okay.
Yeah, it's town code. I mean, not with regard to to state traffic
Yeah, yeah,
violations,
right,
but when
yeah,
it comes to
yeah,
licensing,
yeah.
the licensing is set by local ordinance.
Okay.
But there's nothing on state regulations that outlines any parameters for a driver, background checks, or anything like that.
We set that all by code.
It's-
We make
We
this-
set it, so
yes.
so there's no relevant state regulations.
No, that's correct. There are no.
So the ordinance that we're looking at is the ordinance that we have just in this town.
Yes, correct.
Are there basic state rules?
No, interesting.
No, that's-
No, municipalities, some municipalities don't regulate taxis, but if you set out to do so, you do it by ordinance, which Morristown has done, setting forth all of the criteria to be a licensed taxi company and to be a licensed driver within that taxi company. Obviously, and within those regulations, we set out the fact that you have to have a license issued by the state to drive.
Right, for everybody's protection.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So,
I have some thoughts.
please do share with us.
I will. As to the incident itself, that'll play out in other forums. It's not really going to play out in this forum here. We're talking about non-compliance with the regulations that are outlined in our own ordinance. I think when that ordinance was developed, it was developed with a lot of deliberation. When you read the requirements about the inspection of vehicles, the licensing, the annual reviews and refilings, I think they're all important and they're outlined, and I think they're there for a good reason. I do sympathize with Mr. Insland. Finding people that are working is not easy in this environment. I do think that the background checks are necessary. I don't think it's something that you can waive. I do think that everybody deserves a second chance in life. So when somebody has any violation that's of a certain age, that should not be a bar. So I think what we're probably missing in the regulations is some kind of parameters around background checks, okay? Because everybody should have a second chance, okay? And I think we have to, one, I think that we've had lax enforcement of these regulations on our own admission, okay? Two, I think one of the lessons learned here is that you have to bring back a fee. The fee, even if it's a nominal fee, it causes you to think, knowing that you have to come in and actually make that effort, okay? And I think there's certain laxity that was caused by not having the diligence that we had in the past, where there's a fee, a filing, and everything was due on a certain
Right,
date.
but that's not what we're here to
Let me
discuss
finish.
this evening.
Three, I think that we should have a due date on all materials as one date, not separate dates for each operator, say on July 1, and this may be the case, all filings for all operators and all licensed drivers should be due. This way, you know that there's a due date. Four, I think there should be an information session, because I think every year we should be meeting with all the taxi operators, and the administration should be listening to them, finding out what their issues are, making sure that they understand what the regulations are. But one of the requirements of having an operator's license is to come in once a year, okay, meet with the administration, meet with Margot, meet with the police chief, and talk about the issues that might be surrounding operating a taxi company in this town. Because the bottom line is, taxis are very important for the population in this town. Okay, we can't afford not to have it. And, but we also can't afford for them not to be safe. Okay? I think what we should be doing is, and I think Margot has done this, for all operators, Mr. Inslee included, we should have a deadline where all the paperwork has to be brought up to date. Two, I think we have to take a look at the background check. I think we should continue to require it. How can we assist them in making it easy to get a background check? And I know how difficult that is, and you know how difficult that is, but we should work together to find out how we can make getting that background check completed soon, as quickly as possible. And also work with the taxi cab companies as to parameters as to who can be a driver, okay? Because, you know, just like when you look at prior drug regulations, okay, now with the legalization of marijuana, fact is should we hold any of the people liable for those past violations? Maybe not, okay, because laws change, but things do change, people do change. But I do think that, I think our first goal should be bringing everybody back into compliance and staying on top of it with an annual meeting and with the drivers mandatory, that they come in here and they basically review and they can tell us things. What are we doing? Because our goal shouldn't be to limit taxis. Our goal should be to how to expand it. Because I think with an aging population, I think this service is going to become more and more important. But that's my initial thoughts. Do we get a little heavier-handed on that, i.e., do we put a monitor on it or something like that? I don't know. I'll leave that to your discussion.
All right.
I just, I think your points are all good and well-intentioned. I think that it supports the future licensing burdens, we'll say, administrative, et cetera, and I appreciate that. I think the point here is that we have a licensee who has a documented history of violations, you know, through his own statements. He believes that the requirements are overly burdensome and really shouldn't necessarily apply to him, where it appears that most of the other licensees do comply with and so, you know, it would be a disservice to the people who do comply and to, you know, any other respective people who want to hold licenses who don't have them, for us to just say, well, don't do it again, and we'll be looking out for you. because I know that that's not what we do for any other service. I do acknowledge that Mr. Insland has 7 or so drivers, and that probably represents a significant portion of the total number of taxis that are serviced by the town. It would seem that if we don't do anything, he could have as many drivers as he wants to have, because licenses don't really apply to him. So I think we should do something. There should be a suspension or something to that effect, because I think that we can't just say, don't do it again. That's an acknowledgement that our laws are flawed, and he really is right in not having to comply with them. So those are my thoughts.
Just on one point on that, I think we have to also admit that no one's saying that our laws were flawed. Our enforcement was flawed. Okay, we were also not enforcing.
Some of it was self-reporting. That
Some of
was
it
being
was self-reported,
ignored.
but then again.
And ignorance, not knowing that you had to self-report is not an excuse.
And I'll just raise
You have a
one other
license.
issue. We've got how many licenses in town? How many license cabs? 20?
20 cabs, 15 livery fleet.
And how many are pocketed right now on the 20 cabs?
We, to be honest with you, we have only 6 taxi, this is not including Mr. Ensland's 3 applications that are pending. In total, we have 6 taxi licenses issued, and 2 of them are in pocket.
And we have nobody asking for a license, do we, right now?
We did, historically, but they were told time and time again, we have no licenses available, so.
But you just clarify then this for me again. You said we have 6 cabs out there. 6 cabs
No, we have licenses available,
available.
yes.
But do we have anybody asking currently for those licenses?
No, we need to, that's on my to-do list, we need to figure out a way to disseminate that information.
Because let me be clear, what my fear is that you have no cabs in town. Okay? I think the first objective we should have is to get everybody compliant from a safety standard. Okay? Get everybody compliant. Because my fear is if you've got operators out there that aren't operating 24/7. Okay? I'm sorry. People are in the hospital at night, they got to get home. You have Ubers that won't go to certain neighborhoods or don't operate certain hours. Okay? So that's my fear. My fear is that you suspend it. What happens to Mrs. Jones that has to get to the grocery store? What happens to the person who has to get home to the hospital? What happens to the person that, what happens to people that don't have a car?
But what happens when they get in a cab with a driver that's not permitted, that is not qualified to drive?
It'll be fine as long as we're enforcing the regulations. And as long as we have a deadline, let's say in 4 weeks, that every single one of those companies, every one of them, shows us proof that all their drivers are properly background checked, vetted, and licensed, that they're in compliance with, and give a deadline. Give a very strict deadline. And then, every July 1 or whatever, pick a date that you want, maybe you make it October 1, okay? Every October 1, they're all back in here and they're all being checked again. Okay?
You do know there is a deadline. There's a deadline of July 31st.
Okay, but what were we doing for the last 4 years?
That's not what we're here to discuss, though.
But
That's
again,
not what we're discussing right now, though. Bob, you're off topic.
Okay,
I'm
I
sorry.
don't think I'm off
But
topic.
you are, because what we're here to discuss is Mr. Ensland didn't register, and he knew the deadline was July 31st and had excuses, and he allowed unpermitted drivers to drive his cars and didn't report any of
How many other people are doing
the...
that right now? How many other folks are doing that right now, did not get their paperwork filed in a timely manner, and have drivers that we know have been fully vetted?
I do have additional drivers that have filed late paperwork. I do not know whether or not they have cars on the road. So everything, if I could just add, everything that you're talking about is what I'm working on.
Perfect.
Every single thing. If you want to know what I am proposing to get this back on track, and that includes this current year, and then especially going forward with renewals next year. As you already know, working on amending the ordinance to adequately reflect the current process and requirements. Now, in my opinion, the requirements to get a taxi license, it's not complicated, it's not difficult. In my opinion, what it's never been has been easily spelled out for the applicants so they can easily comply.
Okay.
It's a lot of, historically, to my understanding, it's been a lot of word of mouth. You need this, you need this, you need this. So I'm going to create a spreadsheet. This is what you need. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Don't come back until every one of these boxes is checked. The MVC abstract that is required, that's not difficult. You can now order that online at the motor vehicle website. So I sent out an email today letting our folks know that this resource is available to them. So I think keeping them educated and making the process easier than what I feel it's been. The timeline is established as July 31st. My intention is to begin the renewal process earlier than historically has been done, so that we can work with the licensees to get it done timely. Working with the PD to ensure, the status of licenses, so that the PD is in the loop on who is licensed and who is not.
And inspection of the vehicles.
Inspection of the vehicles, that is going to happen in the coming weeks. We are reinstating the decal practice that I did not know was a thing until I found stickers in the clerk's storeroom. We are ordering stickers. There will be 3 stickers affixed to each licensed vehicle. So if the police see a taxi, there better be a sticker on it. The code also requires that the licenses, the rate cards, and the contact information for complaints must be inside each vehicle. We are going to, historically, we've given them the licenses. We're going to now laminate licenses, so photos can't be swapped out. We're going to laminate the rate cards and each driver's contact information, so all of those 3 are available for passenger reference. And then something else I thought about, if we do want to continue with the fee waiver, guess what? You better have that request in for the July meeting, because come July 31st, you want to renew, it's $250. Those are some of the things I've got so far.
All right.
And
Again,
I'm also just, lastly, I'm starting to build relationships with our licensees, and I anticipate that will also help this process go smoother.
So we appreciate all that work. We're here really to discuss what has happened with Mr. Ensland having unpermitted drivers, which is the main offense here. Not so much the license not being renewed, because now we know there's a process, but the fact that he allowed unpermitted drivers to operate his vehicles and didn't report any violations to you. And I understand we need taxis in town, but it can't be at the welfare of people's lives either.
Well, quite frankly, 90% of what I want.
No, just.
90% of what I wanted is just what Margot articulated. If you want to do something in violation, let's talk about that now.
Well, that's what we're here for,
Well,
because the,
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no. I think
Right.
that was more important, to be honest with you.
Well, I think the corrective actions proposed are great, but in terms of what we're here to discuss, I think we should further discuss, the current.
right, the current
The current
situation, which is
situation.
what this hearing was called for, not the regulations,
Right.
which we could also discuss when we decide on the waiver of the fees during the council meeting.
Right.
So, Stefan?
So just, the ordinance makes it clear what measures are required to eliminate revoke the license. Clearly, the applicant has met several of those, so I think that's the most extreme approach. If there was a way to suspend the license and until such a time as which the licensee was able to prove that he has actually turned over a new leaf and is now complying with everything, I think that would be the other end of the spectrum. I don't see doing nothing as an option, in my view.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too, and one of the points that Margot was saying, that she will produce a paper with explanations. But in the specific case that we're discussing, he's not new in those business, so he should know. He doesn't need that paper with explanations. He knows what he has to do. In the regard of giving second opportunity, 6 years of violations means that we have given him 6 years or 6 opportunities, and comes to a point that enough is enough. So I believe in second chances. I want to be gracious, but there are things that we cannot talk here that are big and huge.
Let me be very clear. When I was talking about second chances, I'm talking about the drivers with violations on their license going back 20 years. That's what my reference was.
Oh, yes,
Be very
definitely
clear.
people
I was not
deserve-
talking
okay.
about second chances for an operator.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you
okay.
for the clarification.
Thank you.
I was very clear. I was very clear when I put that out there, too.
Okay. Fear of no caps. Margot stated that in the past, people have tried to come to Morristown.
To inquire about license, yes.
So if we open the market, people will come to Morristown. Everyone want to come to Morristown for business, any type of business. So I don't think that will be a problem.
I agree with you. I think that if the word gets out and we publicize that we have taxi licenses open, I know that I've been getting emails from many people complaining about the illegal taxis, because a lot of the people who drive legal taxis in this town go through the process and come to you and give you the paperwork that's necessary. Mr. Enslin chose not to do that because he found it burdensome, and that to me is not acceptable. So I do believe that some kind of punishment penalty needs to be, instated. And again, I believe, we need the service in town, but this can't be swept away and have no punishment at all. That's just not acceptable to me.
I'm not disagreeing with any of you, but my point is, the most important thing we need to do is to get what we have now, today, operating on the streets of this town, safe and compliant. And we have to do that as quickly as possible, because that was the underlying root of this problem.
Right. We also have to discuss the
And now
illegal
now you guys
taxi
can
cabs that are
decide what you want to
operating.
do with Mr. Island, talk about it. But I think the most important thing we had to do tonight was to make sure we had a timeline for compliance and a timeline for safety.
So the
Okay, because I
question,
know too many
Right.
people get
All right,
into
let's
these
get back
cabs.
to, we're running out of time.
so the question is, if we looked at the two spectrums, if we went with the temporary suspension with some,
Enforceable corrective actions.
enforcement corrective, basically, until he was able to prove that he's complying, is that possible?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Certainly, I would think that the proper procedural mechanism here is a motion
Yeah.
by one of a council member, whether it be revocation, suspension, put forth a proposal by motion, there's a second, it can then be discussed and then voted on. That would be my recommendation at this point. But all the things that have been discussed are at your disposal.
So if we were to do a suspension, could we do a suspension pending, what's the deadline that you've established for everybody to be compliant, Margot?
I can't set that deadline until I receive the stickers from the vendor. That's what I'm waiting
I
on.
don't buy that.
No, because I can't get them
think you can do
inspected.
everything but the sticker.
No, but we have to get them inspected.
You do.
That's the key piece. We need to get them in, we need to get the vehicles inspected, and we need the stickers slapped on. The deadline for getting the documents in is over.
Yeah, it's
July
July
31st.
31st.
It's over.
It's been over.
And is everybody compliant?
We sent out a final certified letter, and that has started a fire.
Okay,
So
it's
now they are in. But
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned, depending on what your decision is this evening, I am then prepared to send out notice to the public that we have licenses available. I just need to know how many we have available.
All right, that's-
Because is your thought that we're taking some licenses away from Mr. Island, or he's surrendering some licenses?
That's subject to whatever the council decides.
Right. It's-
Yeah.
well,
Because
let's-
again, I'm sorry, but that doesn't make sense either, because you know the number of medallions that are available today that we can say are open to the public for,
Councilman Anacone, I think she was concerned about whatever action you might take this evening, which could affect that number.
we could have added seven onto it?
Well, if you move for revocation this
Okay.
evening, then that would be an opportunity, then
Is
there'd
that
be
what
more.
you're thinking, Margaret?
So let's just see where the council lies. So I'd make a motion to revoke his license.
For a time period or indefinitely?
The revocation would be indefinite.
Indefinitely. What's the straw poll of the council?
Well, I'm saying procedurally at this point, there'd have to be a second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll second.
okay.
Okay, on the revocation of Mr. Enslin's 7 taxi and limo licenses, Councilman Armington,
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone,
I'll say yes.
Councilman Silva,
Yes.
Councilman Umbreak.
Yes.
Council President Mayer.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Enslin's licenses are hereby revoked.
I hope somebody bids on the licenses.
So, at
Council
this...
President, there's no further
I was just
action
going
for
to say, at
this.
this time, we have no other matter, and I will call for an adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. We'll be resuming the council meeting, the actual council meeting at 7:30.